To the Workings of Karma lecture series. This is based on the book by the same name. The program structure is as follows. First, we start off with meditation. This is followed by the lecture. We have a questions and answers session scheduled after the lecture. After the questions and answers session, we conclude the program. For the questions and answers session, please post your questions in the Facebook and YouTube chat or comment section in the live video. This program continues on every Wednesday at the same time, that is, 2 p.m. Coordinated Universal Time or Greenwich Mean Time. This translates to 7:30 p.m. Sri Lanka and India time. Please note and convert this time to your local time and join us every week for this enlightening Dharma Talks series by a very erudite monk. Today's lecturer has a bachelor's degree in Buddhist philosophy and religious studies from the Buddhist and Pali University of Sri Lanka. Also, the Venerable has studied under guidance of notable teachers for 5 years. Now we invite the Most Venerable Teacher to start the meditation session, followed by the Dharma talk and questions and answers session. The meditation session will start now. This will be followed by the lecture.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Let's see how will be our internet connection. I had some problems earlier today, but we'll do our best. So we can start by meditation. We can sit in a comfortable meditation posture. Today, we can meditate 10 minutes. If you would like to meditate longer, or would have any other requests, then you can send us a message. You can send us a message in the comments, or if you have any requests, like private, separate requests, you can send me an email. My email is monksarana, MONKSARANA @gmail.com, and we'll see what I can do for you. We have another meetings in English at another time with other people, but it's not broadcasted at all. It's totally not recorded or broadcasted. And you can also visit me here where I am to meditate. You could meditate 6 hours, 8 hours, 14 hours a day. So there are many possibilities and opportunities, but you need to know what you want and you need to let us know. So let's sit in a comfortable meditation posture. Make sure your back is erect, that you don't lean over anything. You can sit on a chair, totally fine, but make sure that you don't lean over anything. If you sit on a chair, it's very, it seems to be very healthy and very powerful if your thighs and calves are in the right angle, in 90 degrees. 90 degrees angle. If you cannot get 90 degrees angle with your thighs and calves, well then you keep some pillow or something under your feet or under your bum. And with the back erect, we can lower the head a little, send it a little back, and keep our hands in the lap. We keep our eyes a little open. We want to keep our eyes open so that we do not become victims of unnecessary imagination, and we are clearly aware in case if we fall asleep. And we can make the first determination in our minds listlessly. From now on, for 10 minutes, I will meditate on muscles and radiate loving kindness without any movement. From now on, for 10 minutes, I will meditate on muscles and radiate loving kindness without any movement. From now on, for 10 minutes, I will meditate on muscles and radiate loving kindness without any movement. And with that determination, we can gently, lovingly notice there's a flat piece of sinew at the top of the head. We allow it to be heavy and changing. We continue in this manner, accepting the weight and change in muscles and sinews to the forehead, eyes, nose, lips, chin, cheeks, ears, back of the head, we allow all of the muscles and flesh, all of the muscles and sinews throughout the head to be heavy and changing. We continue to the neck, shoulders, arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, fingers, tips of fingers, chest, abdomen, back, we allow all of the muscles and sinews throughout the upper part of the body to be heavy and changing. We continue to the buttocks, thighs, knees, calves, heels, soles, toes, tips of toes, we allow all of the muscles and sinews throughout the body to be heavy and changing. And we allow all of the body parts to be changing. And as we allow the body to be the way it is, as we give the body freedom to be the way it is, we ourselves achieve freedom from worry about the body. Let's enjoy this freedom. Let's watch this peace. Now let's share this peace with other living beings in our minds voicelessly. We can wish, we can allow. May all beings, including me, be in peace. May all beings, including me, be in peace. Now, because the time for this sitting is finished, let's make the last determination in our minds voicelessly. From now on, I will always be calm. From now on, I will always be calm. From now on, I will always be calm. And with that determination, we can slowly, mindfully change the way of our sitting. We have changed the way of our sitting. We can take one more minute to enjoy the peace we gained in meditation and watch what's going on in the mind. Very well. So that's all for meditation, and now we can move on to the lecture, to another few pages of the book.
Lecture will start now. A questions and answers session will be held after the lecture. Post your questions in the Facebook and YouTube chat or comments section.
Okay, so we will just continue with the other pages. So those of you who are joining us for the first time, if any, may like to see the previous lectures that we had, but I believe that even if you don't, it should not be a big problem. Last time what we looked at was we were talking again about karma, of course, but we were talking about the problems of not being enlightened. So we're talking about the deficiencies of somebody who's not enlightened and who is moreover not on the way to be enlightened. The book that we are following is taking the things a little bit stretched at some points, and today we will maybe get to the point where it is very importantly stretched. But anyway, we were talking about the qualities, about the characteristics of somebody who's not enlightened and who is moreover not on the way towards enlightenment. Today, we will be talking about further about this kind of person, and we will also be looking at. So how am I going to do that? Okay. So we will also be looking at the characteristics of somebody who is on the way, who is the so-called skilled and disciplined noble disciple. So either as a summary or as a repetition, we get here, starting from the page 29 of the PDF, but in the book it's page 8. So we are getting some kind of summary of the non-disciplined person's qualities in terms of their ethics. So an uneducated ordinary person is undisciplined in the noble Dhamma, and here the lack of discipline, in addition to being unskilled in four foundations of mindfulness, samatha and vipassana, so unskilled in mindfulness and meditation. They also are not restrained in discipline, and they are also not restrained in the so-called abandonment discipline. So pahana vinaya. So we have vinaya is restrained, and vinaya, restrained is pretty good. Sangvara is restrained. So it literally means closing. So if you want to close a door, you will say dvarang sangvareti. Sangvarati. You will not understand under that anything about Dhamma. It's just a normal common word which just means to close something that's open. But in the Buddhist philosophy and practice as well, we use this word sangvara with an additional meaning or with a deeper meaning. And here the meaning is closing down the, you could say, closing down the desire to see, to hear, and so on, things that are not related to the practice, that are not related to wisdom. So a noble disciple still opens up their eyes and very carefully listen to the Dhamma teaching. But they do not open up their eyes and listen very carefully or at all, ideally at all, to objects of sensual pleasures such as ladies if it's a man and men if it's a woman. It's the same thing. So just like the men need to be careful about the ladies when they want to attain Nibbana, the ladies need to be careful about the men when they want to attain Nibbana. It's actually 100% the same. If you look at the first discourse of Anguttara Nikaya, you will see that for the men, the most desirable object of seeing is the object of woman, or the appearance of woman. And the most desirable object of hearing is the sound of woman, or woman's sound, woman's voice. And so on for smell and taste and touch. And then right after these 5 discourses, because each of these things are separate discourse, there come another 5 discourses which are specifically for women. The Buddha says the most desirable thing to see, the most desirable object of seeing for ladies is the appearance of man. The most desirable sound for ladies is the voice of men. So you see, for men and ladies, it's the same thing. Okay, so restraint needs to be the same for men and women. So why am I emphasizing it so much? Well, there are 2 reasons. So first one is because ladies think they don't have to do anything. They think, oh, my life as a woman, useless. I need to be born as a man next life and start doing something. No, it's wrong. It's totally wrong. It's a wrong view. Ladies can become arahants this very life. And if they become nuns, that means, and hopefully the word is right, 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗀. So that means a renunciant, a lady who has left her home, that is taking the 8 or 10 precepts. They can be an arahant and they can live until they're 120 or 200 or 400 or 400,000 years, whatever is the lifespan available in that period. I mean, our period, probably 120 is pretty good start, but we keep that unlimited. I've heard of some research on some little animal that it has been found out how to increase a lifespan to 1,000 years. So we'll see what scientists will have for us within the next 50 or 60 years. But whatever it is, the ladies can become arahants this very life as ladies. No, no excuse is accepted. Okay? No excuses. Ladies can meditate and can become arahants, just like. So for ladies, it's necessary to apply restraint. For men as well. Discipline. So bahana is very complicated. We'll see what the 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲 has for us, and if I remember, or if I don't, you can ask me in the comment. And this bahana a little more, very and very in practice. 5 types of restraint. So restraint by mindfulness. So that's what I was talking about. I was talking about restraint by mindfulness, particularly about the 5, but here mind is added, and that's fine. Restrained by morality, so the precepts. Restrained by knowledge, that is restrained by attaining meditation attainments. Restrained by attaining the insight knowledge of the 3 characteristics: impermanent, suffering, not self. Restrained by attaining the knowledge of the forms, so that is becoming enlightened. And here we have another kind of one, but I would give number 5. Wondering that we have only 4 in here. So restrained knowledge that arises through attention. So there is the restraint through, see. So that's the restraint through reminding oneself of the purpose of the things that we get as monks. So monks get their clothes or their robes, food, place to stay, and meditate, so that we practice and achieve nibbana. So we maintain that knowledge. So we are restrained through knowledge. But there is another kind of restraint, and that's called humbleness. But somehow I don't see it here. So maybe that's coming later. Okay, we should be restrained also by knowledge. We do not go around and boast, I know this, I know that. We don't go around and say, I know better than this person, or I know the same, or I know less. They're actually all 3 kinds of conceit, are always less, same, and more. And then we actually, or in the scriptures, these 3 kinds of conceit are further developed into 9. So 9 kinds of conceit. So we have 3 kinds of conceit. So we have hinamana, majjhimamana, and then what could it be? Uparimana. Whatever it is, we have these 3 further divided into 9, each of them into 3. And out of those 9, 6 of them are suitable and 3 are not suitable. So we actually have so-called suitable conceit, and we have unsuitable conceit. Okay, so what are those 9 kinds of conceit? So in the 9 kinds of conceit, you believe that you are better than the other person. But the other person is actually better, so you're right. Or the other person is not. Or you think you're better, the other person is worse, so you're right. Or it can happen, you think you're better, but you're not better person. You are on the same level. Or you may think that you're better, but the other person is actually better than you. You may think that you're the same, on the same level, but in fact, the person is better than you. Or you may be correct and they're the same as you. Or you may be wrong again and actually the person is worse than you. You may think that you are worse than the other person. And in fact, the other person may be right, may be better than you. And so that's right. But you may be wrong. Maybe the person is actually on the same level as you are. Or actually the person is worse than you. So these are the 9 kinds of conceit. So what are the suitable kinds of conceit? The 3 are those that are right. When you think you're better, and indeed you're better. When you think you're the same, and indeed you are the same. And when you think you're worse, and indeed you are worse. The remaining 6, of course, are the not suitable. Now, in terms of enlightenment, unenlightened person without any enlightenment can have any of these 9 kinds of conceit. A person who has achieved the first, second, or third level of conceit, so a stream enterer, once returner, or non-returner, they cannot have the unsuitable conceit. They cannot have the 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗲. They will have only 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲, only the suitable conceit. And a person who is an arahant has removed also the so-called suitable conceit. They have no conceit at all. So a good person, however, surely should be disciplined in the suitable conceit. And it's not in here. And I feel that's a big lack. It needs to be here. Restrained by patience. The uneducated ordinary person does not patiently endure cold and heat, hunger and thirst, harmful and harmless insects, fruit, speech, pain, etc. You will read about this in a very nice way in Sutta Nipata, where the Buddha to be is visited by Mara, by the demon, who believes that enjoying sensual pleasures is a good thing. And the Buddha then recounts or lists the 10 kinds, the 10 armies of Mara. And they're basically that. They're mostly the lust, hatred, and hunger, and thirst, and doubt, and conceit, and so on and on. So patience is the utmost skill. 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗃. It's the utmost skill of monks because it helps them to deal with the 10 armies of Mara. Restrained by energy. So the uneducated person does not arouse energy, he does not produce energy or make effort to remove thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty. Now let's move on to the Pahana Vinaya, the second one. Do you still remember? We're talking here about 2 kinds of Vinaya. We're talking about restraint discipline, Sangvara, that's what we are talking right now about, and then abandonment discipline, Pahana Vinaya. So now we are looking at the abandonment discipline. The uneducated ordinary person is also undisciplined by the 5 types of abandonment discipline, Pahana Vinaya. So, abandonment by substitution. So they substitute the appropriate insight knowledges for the various defining factors. So there are 5 hindrances. They are lust, hatred, laziness, restlessness, doubt. And then there are 5 so-called powers. Ideally, you make them into powers. Otherwise, they're usually known as 5 faculties. You develop faculties into powers if you achieve jhanas. So what are those 5 faculties or powers? They are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. So you need to substitute the 5 hindrances by the 5 powers. So substitute the mentality, materiality determine, I see. So need to substitute the identity view by seeing by clearly understanding the body and mind and their difference and their conditionality. Also need to substitute the idea of non-causality by understanding causality. Need to substitute the annihilation view, or whatever way you pronounce it, 𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗃, the idea that that after death there is nothing, by clear understanding of arising things, namely, again, conditionality. And they need to substitute, or he or she or whoever it is, needs to substitute the eternity view, the idea that after we die, we'll be born forever in heaven or hell or somewhere else. So this also needs to be substituted by understanding conditionality. Here we get them divided into arising and perishing, but you cannot really understand arising without conditionality and perishing as well. Also, it's necessary to substitute the idea of delight informations by understanding of the perception of disenchantment. The contemplation is not really enough. Okay, suppression. So yes, so I see the Sero is the author here is dealing with the 3 kinds of pahana. That's great. So you get tadanga pahana, which literally means partial suppression. Why is it partial? Because it is partial in all ways. It is not only partial because it's not complete suppression of defilements and things. It's just suppression of defilements to the level that's available for you, but you still will have there some ignorance and some delusion. That's the way it is, because it's not enlightenment. I have heard the idea that tadanga pahana is actually to the third to the third level, to the third vipassana knowledge, which is sammasana jnana. So if we take it according to the 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗃, especially commentary, it's a book in our Pali scriptures. So if we take it according to that book, there are 16 levels of insight knowledge. Right? We do not have them mentioned anywhere else, not even in Visuddhimagga. Well, I think Visuddhimagga probably, but that's not a commentary proper. We don't get them mentioned in any proper commentary apart from Parisambhiramagga. We don't get them anywhere in the suttas or Vinaya or Abhidhamma. No, zero. Try to search, in a Tipitaka reader. Try to search, for example, 𝗀𝗂𝗯𝗀𝗃𝗯𝗀 jnana. And you will see that it's just not there. Sorry. 𝗀𝗂𝗯𝗀𝗃 jnana. Nobody ever even mentioned it. But Parisambhiramagga commentary and Visuddhimagga do actually talk about these 16 jnanas. So generally, it's understood that this is the way you should and everybody should progress in their vipassana practice. Some teachers, however, in Myanmar do not agree. And there are some further problems, but we'll probably get to that sometime later. Okay, but as for me, I actually am a big proponent of the 16 knowledges. I like that idea very much. But we need to be careful that things that we like, if they're not in the scriptures, we need to be careful that we do not force them or require them. And things that we do not like, but they're in the scriptures, again, we always need to be open that maybe they're useful or important for certain people, or for us, or for everybody at a certain point, or under certain condition. So this was Tadanga Pahana. is until the third level of vipassana knowledge. So the third of the 16, and the third is sammasana jnana. So there are three, the first three vipassana knowledges. They are nama rupa paricheda jnana. Then we have paccaya pariggaha jnana, and then we have sammasana jnana. So nama rupa paricheda jnana is the clear understanding of the difference between the mind and the body. So cannot progress in vipassana. You cannot get anything if you think that everything is the mind. You're stuck. If you think that everything is the mind, you're stuck. It's just that simple. Do you want to be stuck or do you want to be unstuck? Decide for yourself. Those who want to be unstuck will have to accept that the mind and body are different. And both of them are very important to be clearly seen and clearly understood. Mind is not the body, and body is not the mind. They are different, very different, so different that they are different even at the ultimate level. At the very ultimate level you can ever think of, the mind and the body are different. Okay? Second level is paccaya pariggaha jnana. That's when you understand that the body and mind are dependent on each other, at least outside the worlds of asanya satta and arupa. So those are special worlds, and we don't need to talk about them now because we don't live in those worlds now. But in our world, the body is dependent on the mind, and the mind is dependent on the body. So that is the second knowledge, paccaya pariggaha jnana. And then the third knowledge with which you achieve 𝗀𝗶𝗶𝗲 is sammasana jnana. In sammasana jnana, there is a very clear understanding, very in-depth understanding, but not complete, but in-depth understanding of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self in the body and the mind. So that's sammasana jnana, and that's what we dealt with here in number 1. Now we are looking at number 2. Vikkambana jnana, 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲 is very different. It's like totally different from 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲. So in 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲, you suppress greed, hatred, ignorance by jhana, by concentration. As you could understand, hopefully, in 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲, you suppress greed, hatred, ignorance by vipassana, by the third level of vipassana jnana, of insight knowledge. But here in 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲, you do not need any of the three. So it's not really correct to say that 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲 is better than 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲. Actually, 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲 is a little better because it leads you towards nibbana. Whereas 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲 doesn't lead you anywhere. It's just an experience. So that is experiential passive suppression, not through wisdom, not at all. It's a kind of like side effect of your concentration practice, that your greed, hatred, ignorance are not as prominent. And then we have the third kind of pahana, samucceda pahana. And the third kind of pahana is indeed much higher than 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲, and it is totally incomparably higher and more important than vikkambana pahana. Because samucceda pahana is literally the enlightenment. Sang ucceda. Sang means total. Ucceda means cutting off. Okay. So this word cheda is from the word chindati, to cut off. For example, to cut off a branch from a tree. But here, of course, we are not cutting branches. We are cutting off greed, hatred, and ignorance. So sang ucceda, totally cutting off of the greed, hatred, and ignorance. And so this is enlightenment. And you are cutting off the 10 fetters. That's why they're called fetters, because they're to be cut off. And you first cut off the first 3 fetters. So that's the self-view, doubt, and the attachment to wrong practices through stream entry. Then you cut off the lust and anger through non-return, the 3rd level of enlightenment. You reduce them by the 2nd level of enlightenment, but you cut them off by the 3rd level of enlightenment. And by the 4th level of enlightenment, you cut off the remaining 5 fetters as well. That is the desire for material, for concentrations dependent on matter, the desire for concentrations dependent on non-matter, or so-called immaterial attainments, and then conceit, views, and ignorance. Okay, then we get some more pahana. We get here, these pahanas will be now synonyms of the samucceda pahana. So you do not really get anything new, but they're mentioned by the Buddha, so it's great that they're here. Subsiding 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, so that's when all the defilements through the attainment of enlightenment are subside. And then the escape nissarana pahana. So then that's the escape from all formations by attainment of the unformed element. So what are formations? Formations, sankhara, have several meanings. So if somebody starts to talk to sankharas, probably you should not listen to them, because you don't know what they talk about, and you may misunderstand. So if somebody talks about sankharas, I suggest you just turn it off. You don't listen anymore, because that's a useless listening. It's better if you listen to a talk about formations, or about intentions, or about something else. For example, unskillful or skillful intentions, and so on and on. The sankharas have really several meanings, and if you don't know what the other person is talking about, I do not recommend that you listen. You, of course, will do whatever you want, but from my side, I can tell you, as soon as somebody says sankharas, for me, they have finished. They're not a person who I want to respect or who I want to listen to, because they don't know what they talk about. Sankharas have different meanings, and those meanings are very different and need to be very clearly distinguished based on the context. In this particular case, we get a very special kind of formations. As you can see, it's not explained in here. What are formations in this case? They are the abhisankharas. Oftentimes, when you hear sankharas, if you still want to listen to the people, you may use this little rule of thumb that I suggest to you, so it can be wrong. But I suggest to you that you use this rule of thumb, that it probably will be abhisankharas, not sankharas, abhisankharas. Well, it's the same thing. Abhisankharas just mean the great sankharas or the higher sankharas. What are sankharas? Intentions. Intentions that arise based on ignorance. So they're not just any intentions. See, for example, the Buddha had intentions. The Buddha had sankharas, because the Buddha had all 5 aggregates. So if somebody says, oh, these are sankharas, so you need to be careful about sankharas, I would like to send them somewhere. For example, to a school or to a course of Dhamma, because they don't understand what they talk about. No, we're not supposed to remove sankharas. It's wrong. You're supposed to remove abhisankharas. If you remove sankharas, you're dead. It's just that simple. You cannot live without sankharas. You will have them. Yeah. But you can live without abhisankharas. Abhisankharas are simply intentions based on ignorance. They can be skillful or unskillful intentions, but they're based on ignorance. Avidya-paccaya sankharas. That's what I'm talking about. The sankharas of the dependent origination. And usually whenever people talk about sankharas, because they want to show that they know a lot of Dhamma, although they know nothing useful or correct, these people who talk about sankharas very proud. And I would like to suggest that you always think about it like that you always give them the benefit of doubt, and you think, okay, probably you mean abhisankharas. And abhisankharas just mean intention, the intention to see, to hear, to know, to be, to stand up, to sit down, to kill, to give, etc. Based on ignorance. They're the intentions of somebody who's not an arahant. So these intentions definitely removed. We need to escape from those intentions. We need to escape from intentions that are dependent on ignorance. We do not escape from intentions that are one of the five aggregates, like we have rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana. No, don't do that. We don't want to escape from the five aggregates. It's the only way to escape would be to die, and you're not going to die. First, are going to attain enlightenment, and that's what we're talking about. So first, we escape from abhisankharas, and after we have escaped from abhisankharas, you do not need to listen to me. As an arahant, you then, upon passing away, you escape from the five aggregates, including the sankhara. But you will not be an educated person, because you will not be, well, you are not anyway or now, but you will have achieved or attained the full nibbana. You will have ceased into nibbana. The word cease is a little weird here, because we already are not, so there's nothing to cease. But you will cease into nibbana, and thereby there are no more five aggregates, and therefore you are no more an educated person. And here we are talking about an educated person. An educated person has the five aggregates. So the only formations that we are talking about here are the abhisankharas. That means any intentions at all, good or bad, that are dependent on ignorance. So any intentions of anyone who is not an arahant. Okay, so an educated person, arahant. So as you can see, or the author of this book is stretching here a lot, because somebody who's not at all. And here, uneducated ordinary person often lets go of her or his restraint and has not abandoned what needs to be abandoned. Yes, so restraint, abandonment, it's actually a summary of the two things. So this is a Pali thing. Of the word vinaya. So vinaya is the restraint. Vinito is somebody who is restrained, and avinito is somebody who is not restrained. Okay. So Arya Dhamme avinito, somebody who's not restrained, or here it's called disciplined, somebody who's not restrained or disciplined in the noble teachings. All right, we are a little bit over time, but I think I have very clearly expressed my concerns and explanations that will be potentially useful as we move on. We are moving on very slowly, but I believe that as the time goes, we will be faster and faster, so we shall see. I'm also curious whether we will become faster and faster. The book has over 400 pages. So if you ever thought that this course will help you to read the book, you'll probably follow this course for a long time to achieve that goal. But we'll do our best, and maybe in the future we'll get faster as things that are basic will be clearer and clearer. And that's all for the lecture. And if you have any questions, anything you want to know, now's the best time to ask. There are the comment section in both Facebook and YouTube. So just write your comment, press enter, and we will see it. We don't have to read it. We just see it right away, me and the organizer, because that's what this service allows.
Questions and answers session will start now. Post your questions in the Facebook and YouTube chat or comments section.
Okay. Do we have it? Yes. Was the 120 lifespan at the Buddha's time? At the Buddha's time, the longest lifespan ever was the lifespan of Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲. Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲. And we have the sutta of Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 in Majjhima Nikaya. I will tell you in a moment. What's the number? It is the number 124. This sutta is so weird. I can tell you, like in the Majjhima Nikaya, the probably in all of the suttas, this sutta is probably the weirdest to me. To me, it's just totally personal opinion and feeling. So it can be totally wrong. But my feeling is like this sutta is so weird. Now we know from the commentaries, so this is written, so historically recorded, that this sutta was added during the first Buddhist council. It was not taught by the Buddha. We know that from the commentaries from the great masters. There is no discussion about that. We know this was not taught by the Buddha. But in the first Buddhist council, they have decided to add this discourse to Majjhima Nikaya. And it's probably the only discourse in all of our scriptures that was added by the first or any other Buddhist council into the very core of the Sutta Pitaka, that is Digha, Majjhima, Samyutta, Anguttara. Maybe there were some more discourses added by the first council and later. And remember, the first council was a few months after the Buddha passed away. Okay, so it was actually added by the second Buddhist council. So by the second Buddhist council, the Sutta, 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 Sutta 124, Majjhima Nikaya, was added by the second Buddhist council. I'll explain how that is. It's I love this issue or this matter because it helps so much with something else, but I'll hopefully get to that within a few minutes. So this 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 Sutta was added by the second Buddhist council, which was about 100 years after the Buddha passed away. It could not be added during the Buddha's time because Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 was still alive, and this discourse is talking about Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲's death. So if Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 was still alive during the Buddha's time, well then obviously, if it talks about Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲's death, it could not be added during the Buddha's time. And moreover, if Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 died about, maybe 80 years, maybe 80 years after the Buddha passed away, or at least 45 years after the Buddha passed away, that depends. That depends on when Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 became, at what age of the Buddha Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 became enlightened. We'll get a little bit into mathematics as well. So then it could not be added during the first Buddhist council. It must have been the second Buddhist council. But I didn't talk about this matter probably ever, so enjoy. you're going to get some fresh knowledge from me. So Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 was a very special monk. He lived 160 years, according to the sutta. When he was 80 years old, he learned, he's meditated and listened to the Dhamma and so on, and he became an arahant as the Buddha's own disciple, direct disciple. And then Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 continued as a monk for the next 80 years. So he lived 160 years. We do not have anyone else mentioned in our scriptures who would be living 160 years. We do have cases, I think 2. One I remember clearly, but I wonder if there was a second one, of somebody who lived 140 years. That was the Brahmin 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, yet another sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 Sutta. Let's use that number. Number 91. So you get the 2 oldest people in the Buddha's time, both of them mentioned in the same book, Majjhima Nikaya, but not really in the same book if you print it out, because 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 Sutta would fall into the middle book, Majjhima Pannasa, and 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 Sutta goes into the last book, Uparipannasa. Because Majjhima Nikaya is printed as 3 books, Mula, Majjhima, Uparipannasa. Whatever. So the Brahmin 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, who was a layperson, attained enlightenment when he was 140 years, and soon after that he passed away. So there's no problem with the fact that we get 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 Sutta from the Buddha's time. Didn't have to be added by any councils, it just was there. But Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 lived 80 years after his enlightenment, and he was enlightened according to the Buddha's teachings, as well as everybody else. And so, because the Buddha lived as enlightened, and the Buddha could teach Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 within 45 years of the Buddha's Buddhahood, well then Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲, who lived 80 years after his enlightenment, obviously lived longer than the Buddha, and we know that if there is information about his death in the suttas, it must have been added later. And the commentaries explain that it was indeed added during the Second Buddhist Council. So Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 was a very strange person. Very strange in any way you take it, whatever way you take it. And that's what the discourse is about. The discourse tries to explain that Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 was very strange. Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 never got ill. So like whenever we say you must get old, ill, and die, that works for me and you, but not for Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲. Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 never got ill. He was healthy throughout those 160 years. Or so the discourse says it. And he also was very strange because he did not engage with anyone. He just enjoyed his solitude. He did not ordain novices, he did not ordain nuns, and so on. But that would not be so strange. There is one thing even stranger. When Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 was going to pass away in his 160 years of age, he himself went from room to room in the monastery. He would knock on the door and he would say, "Come, I'll show you something." And he would go to another room. "Come, I'll show you something." And he would go like this room by room by room to invite monks for an event. What event was that? Well, he gathered the monks. He probably sat in the center, and then he levitated into the air and he burned his body to ashes right in front of their eyes. Can you imagine? Just let's imagine. for the sake of explanation. Just let's imagine that you would be in a monastery as a monk, and now an old monk comes room to room and he says, "Oh, dear monk, please come, I want to show you something." All of these monks would come, they would gather, and now this old monk, as a little surprise or big surprise, would levitate in the air and burn his body into ash. What would you think about the monk? I suspect that if this was in Sri Lanka, I'm a little critical of some experiences in Sri Lanka, but I suspect that for many people, it doesn't have to be Sri Lanka, it can be anywhere else. The monks would say, "What a proud monk. Such a conceited monk. Did you see that? He wanted us to see him so that he's famous, so that we respect him. Oh, such a conceited monk." Right? He called the monks, right? He knocked on their door. Maybe he even disturbed some in their meditation. He disturbed them. Maybe. And he disturbed them so that they see him. So wasn't he conceited? So that is one thing very strange. Probably for the monks of that time, they didn't care. But today, it would be a big problem. Because monks would say, certainly, he achieved just some jhanas, some mediocre concentration. And he just showed us his psychic powers. And maybe actually he's a parajika because he was pretending that he's enlightened. But in fact, he was not enlightened because he's just so conceited. Why is he conceited? Because he called us to see him. So that's what I worry that would be the case today. Not in the Buddha's time. So as you can see, 160-year-old monk is mentioned in our scriptures, and he was definitely very special. 140 years was 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 and probably others, at least one or two. I have made the list somewhere. I didn't expect this question today. And 120 was relatively normal. We have quite a few people, monks and lay people mentioned in our scriptures who lived 120 years. So that was not something special. And it's not special even today. Even today, we have officially registered people, as you would expect, mostly in in Japan, who lived over 120 years, but not over about 125 years. I think like the oldest recorded person is like 124 years. But that's easy to Google. All right, so that's the answer for this question. We can move on to the next question. What is 𝗶𝗯𝗃? That's what we read about. 𝗶𝗯𝗃 literally means, it literally means in English, you would say like to push away. 𝗶𝗯𝗃 is like pushing away, putting away, getting rid of something. It's usually translated as suppress, but not in Burmese. In Burmese, 𝗶𝗯𝗃 is basically just transliterated into pe, and to pe means to get rid of something, but by force, by making effort to get rid of it. So either asking somebody to go away or pushing them away, or could be person, could be thing, could be something, could be abstract, could be concrete, doesn't matter. So 𝗶𝗯𝗃 is to push away, is to get rid of something. So that is 𝗶𝗯𝗃 in the Pali sense, but 𝗶𝗯𝗃 in the practical sense means total removal or partial, as we read about it, partial or total removal of greed, hatred, and ignorance, of defilements, fetters, of birth, old age, illness, and death. What is the meaning? What are the meanings of sankhara? Great, very good. So sankharas, 3 main meanings. Very different, and it's just so important. First meaning, sankharas is like the very basic meaning that unfortunately is not the most common meaning. So the basic and common are not the same. The basic meaning of sankhara is anything that is. Anything that is so-called conditioned. That's why it is sankharoti. So sang altogether, put together. So it is something that's put together, something that's conditioned. So the causes made it into being. So it is sankharita. So it is sankhara. And something that's sankharita or sankhara is also impermanent. So everything in this world, the body, the mind, whatever you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, yes, see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Think of whether material, immaterial, living, non-living, all of that are sankharas. So we say sabbe sankhara, anicca, all of the conditioned things are impermanent. Sabbe sankhara, dukkha, all of the conditioned things are unsatisfactory. Nibbana is not sankhara because nibbana is not conditioned. So that's the first meaning. Second meaning of sankhara, which is very common, are the abhisankharas, which we already mentioned. So I'll just brush off. Abhisankharas are whatever are our intentions, whether they're skillful or unskillful, kusala, akusala, or some people call them punya papa, whatever they are that are based on delusion or ignorance. In other words, whatever are the intentions of a non-arahant. So sotapanna, sakaragami, anagami are also there. Whatever are their intentions, they are sankhara. Okay, they are abhi sankhara, the second type. And then we have the third one, sankharas, as chetana. You could probably argue that when sotapanna, sakaragami, anagami, when they want to achieve like palasamapatti, when they want to, and anagami if they can, also nirodha samapatti, in other words, when they want to enter nibbana, that is definitely not abhisankhara. Yes, that's true. That is not abhisankhara. But how practical is that? Anyway, as for the third meaning, sankharas, that's part of our 5 aggregates. All of human beings in this world have 5 aggregates. And that is totally independent on your enlightenment. Whether you are arahant or not, a Buddha or not, all of the living beings have sankharas. You cannot get rid of that unless, of course, you pass into nibbana. So sankhara of the Buddha, which are also our own sankhara. So that's something where we are similar. We have sankhara like the Buddha, but here we are talking about a building block, about a core feature of the mind. Okay, you cannot really have mind without chetana, and here we are talking about sankhara as chetana. Where does the Buddha talk about sankharas as chetanas? In Sattatthana Sutta of, and that I always forget, Sattatthana Sutta. And it's not a famous discourse, but it's just so extremely important because the Buddha instructs meditation in that discourse. So it probably should be more famous, right? If you search online Sattatthana Sutta, you will find probably nothing. But unlike the other suttas, which are very famous. But this sutta is actually included in the suttas, in the Tipitaka, and the original teachings of the Buddha. So let me get for you the exact reference within a few seconds. And it is in Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya, and I can also share with you the link. I don't know whether you will be able to see it. I see it. And that's probably the maximum I can do for you. So I have sent it to the chat. Maybe you can see it, maybe you cannot. That's the way it is. It is in Samyutta Nikaya. I have sent the link as well. It shows me tick for Facebook and YouTube as well. So it's there, and in this sutta, the Buddha is describing 5 aggregates in a very different way from the way you probably have ever heard of. Why? I don't know. I don't know. I assume that the 5 aggregates explained in Abhidhamma are mentioned for the gods, for deities, because that's where the Buddha supposedly taught Abhidhamma. So the deities, of course, understand Dhamma in a different way, and so of course the Buddha had to teach in a different way. When the Buddha taught to humans, he had to teach in a different way. So that's why when the Buddha explains the 5 aggregates to the monks as a meditation instruction, he explains sankharas as cetana, as intentions. When it's Abhidhamma, it's very different. In Abhidhamma, sankharas, together with Vedana and Sanya, are the 52 cetasikas. And Vijnana in Abhidhamma are the 89 chittas, or 121 chittas. But in Sattatthana Sutta, where the Buddha again instructs meditation, Vijnana are 6. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. So the 5 aggregates that we should deal with in meditation are very different from the 5 aggregates in Abhidhamma. Well, now you could say, and what about the meditation teachers? How do they teach it? And this is, I think, the most bizarre thing on it, on this problem of the different 5 aggregates. Because the meditation teachers in Myanmar, except Pa-Auk Sayadaw, all of the meditation teachers except Pa-Auk Sayadaw teach 5 aggregates in accordance with Sattatthana Sutta. But I have never read or heard from them, maybe they have said it or wrote it, but I have never read or heard from them anything about Sattatthana Sutta. As if it didn't exist, but somehow it's the basic knowledge. Whereas Pa-Auk Sayadaw teaches observing 5 aggregates based on Abhidhamma. Okay, so that's my explanation for that. Is sankhara related to kamma? If it is abhisankhara. So the abhisankharas, the intentions based on ignorance, are or do result in either good consequences or bad consequences, depending on whether the abhisankhara is a kusala, skillful, or akusala, unskillful intention. In the Sattatthana Sutta, the Buddha shows that the sankharas are intentions, cetana, and they're the intentions based on the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and so on. So the Buddha explains that sankharas are intentions, and we are supposed to observe how these intentions are conditioned, how there is how they are conditioned on what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think of. So abhisankharas, however, is something totally different, because in the sankharas, in the cetana, we are observing the natural feature of the mind. Whereas in abhisankharas, we consider the problem of the world. We consider the problem of birth, old age, illness, and death as conditioned by ignorance, or the intentions that are caused by ignorance. So abhisankharas lead to good or bad kamma, whereas cetana, sankhara as one of the 5 aggregates, can lead to good or bad kamma, and doesn't have to, because my 5 aggregates, due to the fact that I'm not an arahant, lead to good and bad consequences, whereas the Buddha's 5 aggregates, including the cetana, sankhara, do not lead to any good or bad consequences. I have never heard anything of sneezing every 4 months. So you would have to provide me with the reference, and then I can analyze it and check it out, and then I can tell you more details. But I have never ever heard it. You're the first person from whom I remember to ever heard it. Okay, continue to the next question. Were there any other instances where monks burned their bodies at death? Yes. Most notably, I think, Venerable Ananda. Venerable Ananda is one of those rather more famous cases. Venerable 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲 is not famous, or up to my understanding, but Venerable Ananda is one of the very famous cases, very famous monks. And he is also well described in his biography, is also included in the anthology of the biographies of monks written by Helmut Hecker. It's one of the most famous books from Theravada translators. This is the name of the book. So he has written, here it is, Great Disciples of the Buddha by Helmut Hecker. So in this book, Great Disciples of the Buddha by Helmut Hecker, we read about Venerable Ananda, and you can find out there the case of Venerable Ananda as burning his body. And what was the story? So Venerable Ananda, when he was going to die, 2 villages already knew that Venerable Ananda is going to die. And the people there, were arguing who is going to keep the relics of Venerable Ananda. And they were arguing so much that Venerable Ananda decided to resolve the problem. And he resolved it by, at the moment he would die anyway, at that moment, he flew up by his psychic powers above the river that divided the 2 villages. He burned his body into ash such that the ash fell into the river, and the people would never have to argue about the relics again. So that's another very remarkable case of an arahant who burned his body into ashes by psychic powers. And now we have the last question. Is the Abhidhamma we have one thought? Okay, the question is probably not posed properly, but I will correct it in such a way that I understand it, or in such a way that is very good and easy to answer. And if you do not feel that it's answered properly, you can ask in a different way, rather more exactly if possible, next week. So I would ask this way. Was the Abhidhamma taught by the Buddha to the deities, or was it taught by Venerable Sariputta to his students? And I would say both. First, the Buddha taught Abhidhamma to the deities, and as the Buddha taught Abhidhamma to the deities, every day he would descend to the Anotatta lake, and there Venerable Sariputta would already be waiting for the Buddha. The Buddha there would teach to Venerable Sariputta in a concise form what he taught that day or the last 24 hours or whatever the day to the deities, while he created a duplicate of himself in the heaven, which continued teaching Abhidhamma while the real Buddha was at the Anotatta lake, teaching to Venerable Sariputta the summary of the last day and having his meal. So the reason why I believe that Abhidhamma definitely must be from the Buddha and taught to the deities and not from a monk taught to monks is because of the nature of Abhidhamma. Because Abhidhamma is so vast, so intricate, so complete, so amazing in the sense that a person gets amazed when he or she studies Abhidhamma, that I do not think that any human being could ever teach anything like that, except apparently the Buddha. We do know what Venerable Sariputta is capable of when he teaches Dhamma. We have Patisambhida Magga. We believe that Patisambhida Magga, which is a Pali book, is taught by Venerable Sariputta. So we do know the capacity of knowledge and teaching abilities of Venerable Sariputta, but Patisambhida Magga is in no way comparable to Abhidhamma Pitaka. Patisambhida Magga is a small book. Abhidhamma Pitaka, if it was written out with all of the repetitions, would fill up several ox carts by box. It would be thousands of books. And the system is so intricate, but at the same time, perfectly systematic. And it goes so deep. There's so much of information. Even just the Patthana is so rich. If you take Patthana summary, Patthana guide, written by the great Patthana Sayadaw from Myanmar, it is, I don't know, like 800 pages. And that's just about Patthana. That's not the Patthana written out. It's just explaining the conditions and conditionality of Patthana in free form. Then you have the real Patthana, the original, which is 5 books, each of them about 300 pages big. And that is the concise form without, many repetitions, with the probably least possible repetitions. But the Narada Sayadaw, the Patthana Sayadaw, he explains that if you wrote out the whole Patthana with all of the repetitions, it would be as many books as could be heaped up on an ox cart. So about maybe several thousands of books. And that's just one of the 7 sections of Abhidhamma. You have then 6 more sections of Abhidhamma. Now, Venerable Sariputta wrote the Patisambhida Magga would be maybe about about 3% of the extent of Abhidhamma, and the wisdom, the completeness, the thoroughness of Abhidhamma is by no means accomplished by Patisambhida Magga. Patisambhida Magga just explains to you the way to enlightenment. It does not explain everything. Today the physicists, they are arguing about who has got the theory of everything and whether it's possible or available. And the Buddha is providing theory of everything in the Abhidhamma. That's the theory of everything in Buddhism. By no means could we ever dare to compare Patisambhida Magga to Abhidhamma. So no, the Abhidhamma was by no means, totally not, made by Venerable Sariputta. He would never be able to make even 1% of Abhidhamma. He did 3% of the extent, but by no means to that level of prowess. And that was the last question. And we are pretty well over the expected time. But hopefully you have learned something new. And I hope to meet you, whoever you are there or whoever watch probably the recorded video next week. May you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you be successful in everything you do.
Concludes today's lecture on the workings of karma. This series is held every Wednesday at the same time, that is, 2 p.m. Coordinated Universal Time or Greenwich Mean Time. This translates to 7:30 p.m. Sri Lanka and India time. Please note your local time and join us every week. Let us take a moment to share merits with everyone now. Stay tuned for more content like the workings of karma. We are working hard to bring practical insights from Buddhism to improve your lives and the world at large. To get notified about new releases and also to help us spread the word, if you haven't already done so, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting and turning on notifications. Also, please consider watching some of our other content. We also have content in other languages too. Also, please consider subscribing to our other language channels. Hoping to see you again in our live programs.